January 12th, 2026. Mark this date in your calendars because 10 years from now, historians might look back at this specific day as the moment the global balance of power shifted permanently. We are looking at a development that is far more dangerous than a border skirmish and far more valuable than a $100 billion trade deal. The United States has just played its biggest card in the Indo-Pacific. The new US Ambassador Sergio Gor has officially confirmed that Washington has invited India to become a full member of PaxSilica. Now, you might be hearing this term for the first time, and you might think it is just another grouping like the Quad or I2U2, but you would be wrong. This is not about military exercises in the ocean, this is about the very blood that runs through the veins of the modern world. We are talking about semiconductors, critical minerals, and artificial intelligence. The United States has essentially handed India the keys to the future global economy. But there is a catch. There is a massive hidden implication behind this invitation that could either propel India to a superpower status by 2030 or drag New Delhi into a direct economic collision with Beijing. What is that hidden clause, and why has the US chosen this specific moment amidst trade tensions to make this offer? I will reveal that critical strategic detail later in this video, and trust me, once you understand that, you will look at the map of Asia very differently. To understand the magnitude of today's news, we first need to peel back the layers of what Pax Silica actually represents. The name itself is derived from Pax Romana or Pax Americana, meaning a peace enforced by a dominant power. But here, the power isn't gunpowder, it is silica, silicon. The alliance currently includes the United States, Japan, South Korea, Israel, and the United Kingdom. If you look closely at these names, you will see a pattern. The US designs the chips and holds the patents. Japan creates the photoresist chemicals and the lithography machines. South Korea and Israel are the masters of memory chips and high-end logic design. But there is a gaping hole in this fortress. They have the brain, they have the chemicals, but they do not have the scale, the manpower, and the secure processing capacity for the critical minerals that go into these chips. That is where the dragon, China, has been choking the world. For the last 2 decades, China has dominated not just the manufacturing of legacy chips, but more importantly, the processing of rare earth elements. Ambassador Sergio Gor's statement today changes the entire equation. By inviting India to become a full member, the US is not just asking for a partnership, they are effectively asking India to replace China as the industrial engine of the democratic world. This is a move to create a silicon shield around the Indo-Pacific. But why now? Why January 2026? We know that the geopolitical climate is tense. The Trump administration has been aggressive on trade tariffs, even with friends. There have been disagreements between New Delhi and Washington regarding trade deficits and immigration. Yet, despite these irritants, as Ambassador Gor called them, the security and technology alignment is deepening. This tells us something very important about how superpowers operate. They compartmentalize. They can argue about the price of mangoes or steel tariffs in the morning, but by the evening, they need to secure the supply chain for the AI systems that run their missile defense grids. Let's dive deeper into the 4 pillars of this Pax Silica alliance that were highlighted in the briefing today: semiconductors, critical minerals, AI, and clean energy. The inclusion of critical minerals is perhaps the most significant for India. As we speak, mines in Africa and Latin America are digging up lithium, cobalt, and graphite. But where do these rocks go? They go to China for processing. The US knows that if a conflict breaks out over Taiwan, China doesn't need to fire a missile. They just need to stop exporting processed gallium and germanium, and the entire US military-industrial complex would grind to a halt within months. India is the only country with the geography, the coastline, and the diplomatic trust to build an alternative processing hub. This invitation is essentially a proposal to transfer billions of dollars of technology to Indian shores to build these refineries. However, we must look at this from the Indian perspective. This is not charity. The United States is not doing this out of the goodness of its heart. They are doing this because they have run out of options. They cannot rely on Vietnam or Mexico alone for high-end tech integration. They need a giant, and India is the only giant available that is not China. But for India, this brings a massive dilemma, which leads me back to the curiosity I sparked at the beginning. Acceptance of this membership signals a definitive shift away from strategic ambiguity. For decades, India has prided itself on multi-alignment. Being part of PaxSilica is different from being in BRICS or SCO. PaxSilica is an exclusionary block. It is designed explicitly to lock China out of the next generation of technology. If India joins, it means Indian companies will likely face restrictions on exporting certain dual-use technologies to Chinese firms. It means integrating our digital infrastructure with Western standards. Think about the timing. January 2026. We are seeing a race for artificial intelligence dominance. The country that controls the AI infrastructure controls the 21st century. The US realizes that while they have the algorithms, the software, they are vulnerable on the hardware. India has the talent pool. A huge percentage of the engineers in Silicon Valley are of Indian origin. By bringing India into the fold, the US wants to marry American capital with Indian human resources, but on Indian soil. This prevents the brain drain from being a political issue in the US while securing the talent supply. It is a brilliant strategy, but it requires India to align its data governance and digital policies with the West. Now, remember I told you about a specific leverage or consequence that I would discuss later. Here it is. The unspoken reality of PaxSilica is the Taiwan contingency. The world knows that the silicon shield of Taiwan is under threat. If China moves on Taiwan, 60% of the world's semiconductor supply vanishes overnight. The US strategy and the reason for this urgent invitation to India is to create a redundancy plan. They want to replicate the fabrication capabilities of Taiwan in a safer geography. India, with its recent semiconductor mission successes and stable democracy, is that geography. The hidden implication is that by joining PaxSilica, India effectively agrees to be the backup generator for the global economy. If the lights go out in East Asia due to war, the lights must stay on in South Asia. This gives India tremendous leverage. It means the West cannot afford to sanction India or isolate India, no matter what happens in domestic politics or other foreign policy disagreements. India becomes too big to fail in the tech ecosystem. Ambassador Gor mentioned that the friendship between PM Modi and Prime Minister Trump is real. In geopolitics, friendship is a function of utility. The utility of India has never been higher. But we must also analyze the risks. How will China react? Beijing views PaxSilica as a direct containment strategy, a technological NATO. If India becomes the full member, we can expect China to ramp up pressure on the Himalayan borders or use economic coercion in other sectors. They know that once India masters the semiconductor supply chain, China's greatest leverage against the global south is gone. Currently, China tells developing nations that we are the only shop in the town for cheap technology. If India offers an alternative, chips designed in Israel, funded by the US but made in India, that narrative collapses. Furthermore, we have to look at the energy component. You cannot make chips without massive amounts of stable electricity and clean water. The clean energy pillar of PaxSilica suggests that the US and its allies are willing to provide nuclear and renewable energy technology to power these Indian gigafactories. This solves a domestic problem for India, energy security. It creates a cycle where security alliance leads to economic investment, which leads to energy independence. So, where does this leave us? The invitation is on the table. The NATO of technology is opening its doors. For the US, this is a masterstroke to secure its supply lines against a rising China. For the current US administration, it is a way to counter China without spending American tax dollars on new factories at home that might be too expensive to run. They want the efficiency of the East with the security of a democracy. For India, this is the moment of truth. Accepting this means India is no longer just a balancing power, it becomes a pillar power of the free world's economy. The next few weeks will be crucial. We'll need to watch the fine print. Will there be restrictions on India's trade with Russia? Will there be IP sharing agreements that benefit Indian startups? Or will India just become an assembly line? Based on the current trajectory and the aggressive push from New Delhi for Atmanirbharta or self-reliance, India will likely negotiate hard. They will want technology transfer, not just assembly jobs. They will want ownership of the IP. If the US agrees to that, and frankly, they might have no choice given the Chinese threat, then January 12, 2026 will indeed be the day the world order flipped. As we watch this develop, keep your eyes on the reaction from Beijing and the specific announcements regarding technology transfer deals in the coming months. The game has changed and India just got dealt the strongest hand it has seen in decades. It's a high-stakes game and there is no folding now.